great to be here in our wonderful city. Imagine if the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom was somebody who had previously been homeless or was a survivor of domestic abuse. I wonder how these experiences would shape how they would approach their role and what the world would think of them. Throughout our existence, we will all encounter things that change who we are or how we see the world. The experience that shaped me was being addicted to heroin and crack cocaine for almost 10 years, during which time I learned to survive with the bare minimum, to expect nothing, but to be grateful for kind words and gestures. What could someone like me offer the world? After many, many years and countless failed attempts, I finally managed to break free of my addiction in 2007 and immediately felt a really strong desire to use these experiences to help other people and to give back to society. I didn't want to dictate how others should live their lives, rather share experiences in terms of what had worked for me and to offer unconditional love and support, something that I've rarely experienced throughout my darker days. So I started volunteering, and within 5 months I was leading an organisation that had been set up to consult with those that were accessing drug treatment interventions and then to raise their experiences at a strategic level. I very quickly realised that it wasn't necessarily the drugs that were the problem, but that there were deep-rooted societal factors that disproportionately affected the majority of people I was coming into contact with and working alongside. Poverty, deprivation, poor housing, and over-reliance upon a broken welfare system. I remember Michael. I met Michael when he was 39. At the age of 4, Michael was in the care system. By the age of 11, he'd been groomed by a gang, and by 12, he was using and selling drugs. Now, Michael had done pretty well in terms of his addiction. He was stable on his medication, but he lacked the skills that we all need to live life on life's terms. So I worked with Michael and encouraged him to go back into education. Now, education, he wasn't a great fan of because he was dyslexic and he didn't have a great experience of it. But thankfully, he went back. He gained his GCSEs, as well as a few other courses and qualifications. And I'm pleased to say that Michael's now been working for the past 4 years. I would attend strategic meetings, and I couldn't understand why these issues were not at the forefront of everyone's agendas. Why were we not talking about these basic human needs that were not being met, instead focusing on punitive measures or other aspects that didn't really hit the mark? A friend of mine would often say, it's like hitting the target but completely missing the mark. But rather than kind of being disempowered by this experience, because often the language spoken was something that I would generally not understand, I started to ask questions to build my own knowledge and understanding, such as, well, who wrote that strategy? Why is that considered a successful outcome? Or who pulled together that policy? I learned that it was often well-intentioned, middle-class people that would be the ones that were producing these strategies, with a distinct lack of involvement by those who would be directly affected. I would speak to people from across the spectrum of society, from those in positions of power to those that were living on the streets, homeless or in prison, each of whom would teach me something that I didn't previously know. You see, knowledge comes in many forms. The ability to connect on a human level can unearth nuggets of gold that could be used to shape and advance the human experience. There is often a startling disparity between political and strategic aspirations and the experiences of those that are suffering hardships. People would often say to me, well, actually, I wasn't made to feel welcome, or they told me to come back in 3 weeks' time, or they just didn't understand what I needed. Now, this didn't sit right with me, as I felt that those that I was serving deserved a fair and equal chance to access services and opportunities. So, rather than waiting for others to change, I opened my arms to the community and welcomed people, regardless of any issues that they were facing, to a place where they would be respected and be safe. So, within a 12-month period, with the equivalent funding to incarcerating one adult male in a local private prison, something that unfortunately many people encountering problematic drug use will face, I trained a small team of people each of whom had personal lived experience of addiction, homelessness, mental health. We supported hundreds of people, delivered thousands of interventions across a multitude of areas of need. In order to have the services and systems within society that are effective and efficient for us all, it's so important that beneficiaries are involved in the planning, monitoring, delivery, and evaluation of such endeavours. We should be aspiring to encourage those with lived experience to activate their lived experiences and progress to positions of seniority and power. Now, this isn't to replace other forms of knowledge or people, but should complement and enhance what already exists. Policies, such as drug policy, should be in place to make sure that all sections of society are safe and can succeed. From my experience, drug policy causes much more harm than it does good, and criminal justice interventions incarcerate thousands of people every year that just need help, without much in terms of rehabilitation. But don't take my word for it. Speak to those people that need help. They will tell you for themselves. I started on this chapter of my journey wanting to help one person deviate from the road that I'd been down. This led me to places of unbelievable joy, but also places of utter frustration after I was exposed to systemic failures and barriers. However, I'm confident that communities possess the solutions to bring about the scale of social change that's required in the world today. But in order for this to happen, we need a political and societal willingness to embrace lived experience, regardless of race, age, class, religion, or any other term that separates us. We should use language that is inclusive rather than exclusive, and eliminate terms that stigmatize others. I am now working with policymakers, funders, and other leaders to ensure that lived and living experiences of communities are key and central to our collective thinking and planning. I envisage a world where there is more equity, less marginalization, and when, if people fall down, they are supported to get back up and to pursue their dreams without fear of discrimination. I believe that humanity has much more in common than that which differentiates us. I activated my lived experience to help others. What could you activate your lived experience for? Thank you.